When you're in your 30s, you actually think that the days are endless. You actually think that they don't run out. And there I was sitting there in front of a doctor saying, I just want to show you what the 5-year survival rates are of stage 4 lymphatic cancer. And you look at it and you say, like, I've got to be really lucky to actually live more than 5 years. Like I won't be here in 2011. And that for me was the turning point.
Good morning, Tom Panos.
How are you, Jeff?
Mate, I'm wonderful, thank you. The first thing I'd like to say is thank you so much for your time today. And on behalf of all of my agent friends in the agent community of Australia and Australasia and the world, thank you so much for the commitment that you have made to everyone's lives in your journey over many years of being the real estate coach and inspiration that you are. I've been following you for my whole career, and that's 25 years. So thank you for everything you do for everyone. It's a massive career. And so I wanted to start with that.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for the feedback. And it matters to me. It matters a lot because, Jeff, you know, like we all have different currencies in life, and at various stages in our life, you know. And when I mean by currency, Jeff, I mean money. You know, some people's currency is only money. Some people's currency is money plus appreciation, recognition, contribution, making a difference. So, you know, in the latter part of my life, don't get me wrong, I don't work for free, but in the latter part of my life, I've started to having the currency of feeling like you're making a difference matter, and feedback like you is the payment of that currency. So I do value it. I don't take it for granted.
Oh, mate, it's you can clearly tell that, you know, yes, of course, you get paid for what you do, but it's very evident that it's, you know, it's not about the money for what you do. And I think that's just what makes you so good at what you do. Like, you know, like anyone that loves what they do, I suppose that's the first step of being good at it, isn't it? And living it and breathing it, and just, you'd almost do it, you know, without getting paid. And I'm sure that's the case with you.
Well, you'll be better. So Jeff, that's an interesting one, because you'll be better no matter what job you are on the planet. You'll be better at that job if money doesn't get in the way. And I'll tell you what it's like. You'll relate to it in real estate because it's really simple. If you're a great real estate professional in commercial sector, right? If money doesn't get in the way, you could look at a client and say, you know what? This is a better choice for you. This is what I recommend. Even though I actually lose out on this deal, it's actually the better thing for you. So you're actually better at the job. And me as a coach, trainer, educator, call it what you like, it's so much better for me not having to worry about the money, because I can then say, like I did this morning to a client, because I know I was going to annoy them with what I said. And I wouldn't have said that to them 20 years ago, because 20 years ago, I wanted to have a reoccurring client base. Yeah. So I would have said to them, oh, no, it's all good. It's not your fault. But today the conversation was, it's not all good. No.
Yeah.
And it might not be your fault, but it's your problem now. So we need to sit there and face this. So you can actually say things without a filter, which is what is needed when you're in a coaching relationship. Because I think that if you just say to people, everything's going to be good, you're not actually getting people to shift from the current state that they're in, you know?
Oh, it's just so true. And you may or may not know, I'm a third generation real estate agent, and my father, who's agent for 45 years, my father, 82, sold his last property only earlier this year. So he says, it's the first thing he said to me in real estate, and it's a common thing you hear: never count your commission before you've done the deal. And no matter what happens, no matter what goes on, you always you got to do the right thing. And exactly what you said is what he said to me. you may miss out on a deal or two, but it'll always come back to you in droves. And it's just great life advice, really, as well, isn't it?
100%. Smart man. That's why real estate's obviously run in the family for a few years. Because if he'd said to you, if you can rip everyone off once in your lifetime, you're going to make a good living. Just go off and get everyone just once. You wouldn't be around with 3 generations, right?
That's it, mate. That's it. Tom, can I ask, so obviously I've known you for a long, long time, as mentioned. Can you tell us and share a little bit with the audience of your background, prior to training? And can I ask, so 2 questions. What was your background prior to training? Was training part of your vision, and how did you step into the business that you are?
I went straight from uni into listing and selling real estate.
What did you study at uni?
Commerce, business. Shocked everyone because, back then, I'm 54, so we're talking about in the 80s, real estate was not as an attractive profession as it is now. Today, the truth is there are people that choose to actually say goodbye to the corporate world of 9 to 5, and they'll hustle and grind in property 24/7 because they want control of their destiny. But back 35 years ago, Jeff, that wasn't the case. Usually people that went into real estate were people that weren't good enough to go to university. They didn't want to be a tradesperson, right? So they wanted to wear, a suit and a shirt and a tie. So real estate was the career. So it shocked everyone. I actually loved real estate from day one. And 34 years later, I still have a spring in my step to work. So real estate, as a real estate agent, then I became a franchisee. I got asked a lot of the time when I was a real estate agent to go to other offices and tell them how I was listing and selling so many properties. And before you know it, I became an accidental trainer. And I just started, people would call me, and my business partner at the time said to me, mate, this is a great deal for you. We're getting 50-50 in the business, but in addition to that, you're picking up all this other, training and consulting fees. So at some point that had to come to an end, because one of the things that I've always had, I've got a philosophy in life, Jeff, to run a life that is ELF, effortless, lucrative, and fun. Run an ELF business model. And if I had to be true to myself, it meant that I had to look at my business partner, who's still my best mate, by the way, 35 years later, Chris and my daughter, my best man. I said, mate, it ain't fair. It's not fair on you, and it's not fair on me, So we decided that I would move into education and training.
Yep.
And that was it. There was along the way, but Jeff, I did spend, a significant amount of period working for Rupert Murdoch and Lachlan for the Murdochs at News Corporation.
What were you doing there?
So I became head of real estate. But if you actually look at really what I was doing, the main role is I was shifting the real estate category to move from a transactional-based business to become a marketing-based business by encouraging vendor-paid advertising as the model. And News Corp loved me for that, because News Corp makes money out of media. Yeah. So I did that. So in many ways, even though the role was, head of real estate, News Corporation Australia, fundamentally what I was doing is creating a change. And essentially what I did is use the real estate agents of Australia to become the sales force of News Corp. If you fundamentally look at it, I would say, hey, here's our packages. This is how to go off and sell it. So we had, 60,000 agents across Australia selling it. But, that's the only bit that I wasn't sort of, you'd say, hey, full on just, training and development, because during those 15, 17 years at News Corporation, I ran teams, and I had big budgets, the largest budget. I was mentioning this I caught up with the Brian White and Dan White yesterday. They wanted to catch up, and they said, mate, can you come and meet up with us? And I met up with them, and I was they were talking to me about life at News Corp. At the peak of it, Jeff, it was 800 million in revenue, and I had around 400 people. And so that period of time did mean that I sort of moved away from training and development, and I was running a real estate category for a media company. But that's been my life. Today, I spend most of my time in producing content, both for my subscription-based business, but also face-to-face work and Zoom work.
Yeah, and some lots of just such wonderful content. And you have a phenomenal following on social media, and congratulations to obviously what you've done there, and huge numbers of followers across all of your platforms. What could you say to, I mean, not just agents, but to business people on some key tips on building a brand across social media? Look, a lot of businesses, the lead agents are right into it. A lot of agents are still not, in particular in commercial, but I think as important in agency, like in any business, somebody that's wanting to create a brand, you've done it so well. What's a couple of things that you could tips that you could provide for people that are wanting to sort of get a consistent brand via social media?
To ensure that you're posting content that is aligned to solving problem or problems to the audience that you're delivering the message to. Mm-hmm. So if you can find a really, really big problem and then keep providing solutions to the marketplace via your social media platforms, people are going to stick with you. Because this is the way people work on social media, is that they scroll with their finger, right? They're just scrolling, and then eventually they stop. What you want to be doing is to be the showstopper where they stop. And the way you do that is you earn the right to the attention. The way you earn the right to the attention is people turn around and say, you know what? Every time I look at that guy's post, I actually come out of the post smarter, right? And I don't feel that when I read the post, he's showing off a new Rolex watch, or he's trying to show me that he's got an exciting, creative life, or that he's rich. Yeah. But I actually find that when I stop here, I actually feel like I walk out of that post a smarter person. Yeah. So I think that would be a big part to it.
Brilliant. Providing value. And there seems to have been a big shift in social media in recent years, in a lot of content providers providing a lot of free content, which is, fantastic for the digesters of this content. Have you noticed that in recent years, it seems to be a lot of free value provided to people, more than sort of 5 years ago?
Yes, I have. And the reason why is that if you are charging for your content, you essentially are reducing the amount of audience that will actually find out about you and connect with you. So what actually happens, Jeff, is that I got asked yesterday, this is interesting, I got asked by someone, they said to me, Tom, you're a smart guy. I'm curious. Why do you just give all this stuff away for nothing? What's the agenda there? And my response was, if they don't like the free stuff and they don't get knocked off by the free stuff, what makes you think they're going to take the next step to actually even pay for the rest? Because he had a view, Jeff, that what you do is give them the bad stuff, and then what you do is say, hey, you got to pay for the good stuff. Yeah. Well, my view is, man, just knock them off their feet, and they just turn around and they just say, man, I got to be part of this guy's community. Because fundamentally, I want you to think, Jeff, for me, and I don't have a monopoly on the truth, but I have a personal view that my social media is a TV station. Yes. And I'm the controller. I'm the producer of the TV station. Yes. So I just have this view that I've got an audience there, and this audience here wants to be part of my community. And I think that's probably the main reason why you're seeing people providing free content. They are creating communities, right? No different to a church. Like, man, a church, right, is a community. You go into a church, you walk in for nothing, right?
Yeah.
You walk in for free, right?
Yeah.
Then you can immerse yourself in the church, you know.
Yeah.
Then you become part of the church. Then, you know, you talk to people, oh, mate, yeah, I'm part of this church. And then before you know it, you're actually contributing to the church, or you're involved in works and there. So I think it's building a community, and that's what free content does. It allows people to get a taste of what you're all about.
Yeah, brilliant. And it's a wonderful thing. I've loved it. Tom, you interview and are part of many very successful people's lives, agents and other industries as well. What would you say are the top 3 characteristics of keeping success at a high level for long periods of time? In particular, in our industry that is so fast paced. So, your life, a prime example, just on all the time, always high quality, you're always there, and you're always at the same energy level. And for the agents that you coach, what do you think are the top 3 observations that you make that you can see of these types of people to sustain this sort of, high performance energy?
Okay. I would probably say the first one would be their ability to be Teflon where others are Velcro. And what I mean by that, if you can just visualize Teflon, things slide off you. Velcro, they stick. If we're in the business of sales, real estate, financial services, any category, if you are in a sales-based profession, you are also in the rejection-based profession. You will get rejected because the model is very simple. You must gently interrupt people that probably don't want to talk to you on an ongoing basis to keep your pipeline full. In that process, Jeff, you are going to get rejection. You've got to make rejection your best friend. Or my approach is that I'm Teflon. Something negative is said, it slides off. There are just so many girls and guys who are just a Velcro in the profession. You know, they ring someone up and the person says, I told you, take me off the database. And then they say, okay, I'm really sorry. Yeah, we'll take you off. And then they go off and they sort of, sit there and they look for comforting and counseling from their colleagues because they've had this, unhappy call. Whereas the real professionals, they say, sorry, sir, I'll make sure that we take you off the database. Thank you. Have a great day. And then they go, next, pick up the phone. Hi, it's Jeff here from Ray White. I know you're not selling right now, and I'm going to be brief. The reason I'm calling is because they move on. Whereas these people that are Velcro, they personalize rejection, and often they can actually make a bad day look like a bad week, or a bad week look like a bad year. They catastrophize. So I reckon that's a big one, Jeff. That's a big one. Personalization of rejection,
Yeah.
Number 2, Jeff, I think is the decision on whether you're interested or you're committed. Big difference, right? Interested versus committed. I notice the successful people. Successful people are committed. Unsuccessful people are interested with a get out clause in their contract. They've got a plan B. They've basically said, I'll do this, but if it doesn't work out, I'm walking. The best of the best, Jeff, I've noticed they go in there and they say, actually, there is no plan B. It has to work. I haven't made it for the Wallabies. I don't have a Netflix special that's going to make me 50 million in the next 3 years. and I'm not a brain surgeon at Prince of Wales. I'm actually a real estate pro. So I'm going to make the decision that I'm going to be the best. So I think there comes a time where you got to look in the mirror and say, am I all in? Have I gone into this committed with no get out clause? I think that would be the second one. And then I reckon the third one, Jeff, is that I think the best of the best, sustainable long-term, they've got these micro habits or rituals in their life. Because if you look at success in life, Jeff, you're always going up staircases. You're always going against gravity, right? So if you can just picture going up a staircase and you got two options. You go up a big staircase without holding a balustrade, without holding, a rail, or you just go up there, right, holding something as support. I reckon the good ones, they've learned to have rituals and micro habits as support,
Yes.
Simple things like, for instance, in my own life, right, I've got about 5 or 6 things that ensure that I'm hanging on to the balustrade when things get choppy. Daily exercise. Yep. Number 1, eat well. Number 2, sleep well. Number 3, number 4. I'm just making sure that the people that I'm texting, talking to, hanging out with are allies and not thieves of my energy. The next thing is I'm 100% making sure that every day I start with the intention of having a day of design, not a day of accident, right? It's so important that you just don't go with the flow, that you actually become an architect of what the perfect day looks like, and that you say, hey, if this was a brilliant day, this is what it would look like. So you start with that intention. Yes. So I think having those micro habits and rituals, Jeff, made such a big difference, because at the end of the day, let me tell you, there are days when you wake up and you're not pumped and you're not motivated. Yeah. So process trumps motivation as far as I'm concerned.
Mate, that you've just absolutely answered my next couple of questions, and I was going to ask specifically yourself, mate, with the successful and long-standing and busy lifestyle that you have, what your sort of not negotiables are, and you've just answered those. So thank you. I love those. So Teflon versus Velcro, commitment, sticking to the decision once you've made it, and your day of design. It's not rocket science, is it? It's just lots of little things that you just continue to do well and continue to stick with, no matter how tough things become. And so thank you for that.
Well, Jeff, I'll just say this to you. Success, and you made a really valid point there. It's these little things that are happening over time. Think about this for a moment. Success happens gradually, then suddenly. Mm-hmm. It happens gradually, then suddenly. And a lot of people say, oh, but, what do you mean by that? Well, it's really simple. So if you turn around and you exercise for half an hour a day and you're eating well and you're sleeping well, hey, after 3 days, getting on the scales is not going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. But after a year, it does make a difference. Same thing about failure. So failure doesn't happen suddenly. It happens gradually. You're like a guy that has a heart attack today. That didn't happen today. That happened because he ate, bacon and egg rolls and didn't exercise and was stressed and smoked for 5 years. Then it happened suddenly. A divorce 100%. Doesn't happen. A divorce doesn't happen in a day. A divorce happened because for 11 years, you actually never had the conversations that needed to be had. And then one day, one of the couple says, I'm out of here. Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I have to say, man, I'm 49. I've been an agent for close to 25 years now. I think in the last 7 years, actually, since I sort of started the business with Dan and Brian, how much I have sort of learned about being an agent, being a business owner, and the growth in my sort of professional career has been phenomenal. And I thought I was at the top of my game before that, and thinking, mate, I was sailing along, and I think there's always new things that we can learn and always sort of new things that we can implement. But the day of design for me personally, and just being really, really, really focused on what I want to get out of each day has just is just been massive for me. But yeah, it's just, you know, I feel I'm turning 50 next year. I feel it's all just beginning for me. Like there's so much ahead. And I think it's, you know, getting down to that mindset side of things as well. You know, it's what does success look like for you, Tom?
Okay. And I know this is not to sound corny, but you know, being above ground is a great start, and I can say that specifically, having had you know, illness for a part of my life, actually a big part of my life. So I've had, you know, Brian asked me yesterday when we were sitting there. He asked me, he said, I can't remember, Tom, have you had cancer 2 times or once? I said, Brian, I've had cancer 3 times, and I've had a total of 300 chemo and radiation sessions in my life. So when you ask me, Jeff, what does success look like? If I can wake up in the morning and breathe in, I also acknowledge, I'm aware I've had a gift that was badly wrapped, cancer, that has taken me to a world where the average person doesn't see it. I mean, I would sit in a chemo chair and I would look to my left and I would look to my right, and I would be aware that over the next 13, 15, 16 weeks, one of the 2 people wouldn't be there. And 16 years in that ecosystem of cancer at RPA Lifehouse has actually taught me the importance of understanding that if you're on the planet, you've won the birth lottery big time, because the chances of being conceived are quite remarkable. I mean, this is not me saying it. If you actually go off and Google, you know, chances of being born, it's actually 1 in 400 trillion. There is a mathematical formula to it, right? So it's actually winning the lottery big time to come out of a female stomach and say, you're here, right? Then you turn around and say, well, what are the odds of coming out as a baby in Australia, where you've got fresh water, where you've got very few wars, where you've got a beautiful climate, where hardly anyone starves, versus being born in Kabul today, right? You would turn around and say, you've won the birth lottery big time. So for me, I have to say to you, Jeff, it's so important that every morning I remind myself that being alive, being healthy, and having choices to do things is not an entitlement. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. And there are millions of people that would swap spots with you in an instant, but we sometimes forget. We forget. We have the law of familiarity come in, and we get so used to everything that we feel, hey, you know, that's mine. Man, think about it. The world was here first. It owes you nothing, right? It owes you nothing. So for me, having this attitude of gratitude is so important. It's corny, but it's so true that you need to wake up each day and actually look at, you know, what's great in my life, not what's not.
It's just so beautiful, man. And it's just, it's clear, and it shines out of you in everything you do. I think your clear appreciation for life. And I think it's clearly, you know, and it's part of your purpose on this planet is, and you can see just helping people in being the best person they can be. And real estate is just one of the vocations that it just happens to be the trade. And it's again, thank you for everything you do for all of us. And it's
pleasure.
It's you know, it really oozes out of you. Tom, thank you so much for sharing that with us, mate. It's some very deep and personal information, and thank you for sharing it with the audience. And it's of great benefit for all of us alive today to hear these learnings and teachings from someone like yourself that has been through, so much in that world. So thank you. And on that note, we're going to have a short break, and then we'll be back to ask a few more questions in part 2. Tom, welcome back. Round 2.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time, mate. We are in a very goal and, let's say, KPI-driven industry, real estate, and I think this also flows through really to life in general and other professions. What are your views on goals and the process of setting goals and the process of achieving them in business and in life?
I think so. It's really interesting because you can feel like an absolute loser, going to education conferences or reading content that says, have you got goals? Are you writing your goals down? And to remind yourself that, man, I know this, but I'm not doing it. But, here's the thing with me. And again, Jeff, I don't have a monopoly on the truth, but I just noticed that I have different seasons in my life. And there are times where, I become fixated. For instance, I'm in a fixated period now. Like in my business, there's a thing called ONDFM. I'll explain that. October, November, December, FM. Everyone thinks it's a radio station, but it's actually just the first letter of the 5 most important months in my business. And as a coincidence, it's also for the real estate industry. Because if you look at the real estate industry, October, November, December, February, March, a lot of business is transacted, right? So you've got this bit of a break in January, but ONDFM. So at these periods of times, I become fixated. In fact, I actually say to my family on 1st of October, goodbye. I will see you again on the 24th of December, right? This is the goal here. And then there are other times where, I say, guess what? Grand Slam's over. Grand Slam season is over. Now I have totally different goals. Yeah. And those goals could be do nothing, and sometimes I feel, people say, oh, but Tom, do you ever feel guilty doing nothing means nothing? I said, well, not really, because if you value doing nothing, it actually does meet some of your needs. There's something there. There's something there that's met. If you love sitting on the sofa watching, Australia play New Zealand in a test cricket game in the summer, and you highly value that, and you're just sitting there, that meets a certain need. So I think for me, Jeff, I think you have different seasons where goals come in and go. So I do think they're important. I'm not so hung up on this formula, which is called SMART, SMART. What are they? SMART, measurable, attainable, realistic. I'm not there. For me, all I want to do is drift in the direction of the goal. As long as you're drifting in that direction, Jeff, you know what I mean? As long as you're drifting, right? That's where I reckon goals work for me.
And you know where you're going, and you've got, right, this is where I am. This is where I want to go. The journey might have it might go this way, go that way, but the energy sort of takes you there if you've got the sort of the rough vision of, where you want to go.
Yeah. And I think that one of the biggest decisions a person's going to have to make is where they want their life to drift towards, where they want it to drift towards, because if you actually get the destination wrong, it would be pretty sad to actually get there and then realize, man, I've actually climbed the wrong ladder here, right? Yeah. So imagine going up there, you've climbed and you're thinking, man, I got this wrong. I didn't expect this to be like this here. I've got this wrong. So I think you do need to actually think about, what does a good considered life look like for you before you start heading in that direction. There's a wonderful, Jeff, there's a wonderful short book I like. It's a novel actually that I'd love everyone to read called The Death of Ivan Illich.
Ah.
I really, Jeff, to everyone that's listening to your great podcast or watching it, and to all your community, The Death of Ivan Illich is a novel. And it's essentially about a guy who becomes a solicitor, becomes a barrister, and then becomes a judge. He's on the surface, everything looks good because this guy is growing. He's eating at the right restaurants. He's driving the right cars. He's got the trophy looking wife. So everything looks great on the surface, but deep down, he's angry. He's upset because he didn't want to get married when he got married. He didn't want to have kids when he had kids, and he didn't want to be a judge, right? And but he's gone along with it because that's what his mates did. That's what his family told him to do. And then what happens, Jeff, is that I think he's in his mid-40s. He gets diagnosed with cancer, right? And he's going to die. He does die in the end. So he gets this terminal illness. And there's a scene. The actual novel starts with the end scene. It's one of these ones where you start with the end and it goes backwards. He's lying there in bed, about to die, with his wife by his bedside. And he really disliked his wife after all of this because his wife, he felt, was the one that made him go down that path, right? Mm. And he just looks at his wife and he says to her, "What if my life has been a lie?" And it's really sad to listen to that because it's like a guy that has no longer got a choice because he's now about to die, where he reevaluates and realizes, man, I've actually lived everyone else's life. I never actually had the courage and vulnerability to say, this doesn't work for me. This is the path I want to take in my life, right? So yes, The Death of Ivan Illich to me is a very, very good bit of content for your audience to listen to, and then to ask themselves, am I living my life or am I living the life of someone else?
Brilliant. I love it. I love the whole subject of purpose and just living what you're meant to be on this planet. And just, I'm very, very grateful that I found that this is my calling. You obviously have yours. And I think it's just, that's where the magic happens, really, isn't it?
Well, you've done, look, so turn around, we look at you, right? You turn around. There's no reason in the world that you and I should be sitting here right now using modern day technology to producing content out for an audience. The truth is, you should be, mate, just go off and list and sell real estate, mate. Just go off and list and sell real estate. Stick to your core business, right? But you've listened to something on the inside, and something on the inside has said, hey, there's more. There's more, right? There's more here, right? And you've gone off and acted on it, which is the big difference, because I think a lot of people, they're aware of the voice, but I reckon they just don't go off and take the action. It does need courage.
Total goosebumps as you're talking about that, because it's exactly right. And I think it's just being in tune with that sort of that feeling, and the gut feeling, Tom, it's a real thing. As you know, there's reasons why we have those little thoughts, and it's being open to that sort of change. And definitely this, for me, this is exactly what that is. There's look, it's a small amount of time each month for something that I really love, and that the audience can get great sort of, as you say, free content and advice from my guests. And it was a little thing, a tickle in my stomach, and I acted upon it. And that's, I think, look, action is such a big thing, and you're in the world of successful people, and it's everything. It's having that thought. And if you want to get where you want to go, it's taking action. I have I have a question for you as we're closing, and I've got so much more I wanted to ask you, but as we're closing, what is a piece of advice that you would love to give your younger self, like younger in sort of, at school, younger, early teens? What's a piece of advice that you'd love to give young Tom Panos?
This is not me being negative. So as I say it, I don't want people to turn around and say, oh, it's gone from being upbeat to gloomy. But at the age of 36, when I got diagnosed as a stage 4 in lymphatic cancer, is the first time I actually became aware that people actually do die. Listen, I mean, I know the concept was that you don't live forever, right? But, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s, you actually think that the days are endless. You actually think that they don't run out. And there I was sitting there in front of the doctor saying, I just want to show you what the 5-year survival rates are of stage 4 lymphatic cancer. And you look at it and you say, like, I've got to be really lucky to actually live more than 5 years. Like I won't be here in 2011. And that for me was the turning point. Because if as a young person, Jeff, you can accept that you're going to die, then you can start living, because you begin to realize that time is a non-renewable resource. And for me now, Jeff, that day in March 2006 has taught me there's no such thing as an unimportant day.
Oh,
time is a non-renewable resource. Money, man, it comes and goes. It goes into trust account. It gets put into a general account. It then goes into your personal account. There's this flow of money and it keeps turning over and turning over. But time, man, it's been going, it's consumed, and it never comes back.
And that's so massive. And I have a 10-year-old boy, and I'm very much into that concept of time. And I'm a big fan of Ryan, who you had at ARIC, and all the stoicism and all that sort of stuff about thinking about, your last days. I think it's very powerful, and I try and talk to my 10-year-old son about it, and it's sort of a lot of it goes over his head, and I think it's just could be something that would be just so valuable for schools, and I'd love to get on a stage one day and talk to young people about that sort of thing, because I think that's such a massive thing you've just said. And I think for everyone that has kids, and for every, you do think that, don't you, when you're in your 20s and your 30s, it's I'm young, it's, things are going to go forever. And that's very powerful, mate. And that's wonderful.
I love, and unfortunately, my young brother, sibling, the only sibling I have, he passed away 2 years ago from an unrelated illness in his very early 40s. So I spent a fair bit of time going to Rookwood Cemetery to visit him. And I find it, Jeff, I actually find going to a cemetery is a very, I wouldn't call it a thing that makes me happy, but I've got to tell you, it helps me live an intelligent life. Because what happens is you go there, that it doesn't matter whether you're 40 or 50 or 60, you're heading home in your life. So I'm 54. Let's assume I live to 80, right? I'm heading home. I've got to accept it. I'm closer to the end of my life than the start of my life, right? It doesn't mean that I can't choose to have a future bigger than my past. I can still have a future bigger than my past. I can have visions that the rest of my life will be the best of my life. Absolutely. But what it means, Jeff, is that I can actually spend the remaining decades of my life, if I'm fortunate enough to have those, in a way that is useful, in a way that I can turn around, and when I'm 80, 82, that people are looking around and say, man, this guy here, look what he did for us. look at the contribution he made, that, you know, people are going to be sitting around like, you know, my daughters who love Byron Bay will be sitting at our home in Byron, and they'll be saying, you know, Daddy bought this because we were in love with this area, and they've got their partners there and their kids there. You start thinking about a life, what it's like when you're not on the planet. You know, that's the advantage of accepting that you're going to die. And for anyone that's watching this, guess what? Google it. No one has not died. So it's definitely happening.
Yeah. Oh man, that's powerful stuff. What a wonderful way to finish. Mate, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate it. The audience is going to love this. And I look forward to seeing you very soon. You're a champion, and mate, continue doing what you're doing. You're a legend.
Great stuff, Jeff. It's been a pleasure being on this podcast, and I'm going to hand it to you. I can see you've gone all in, and you're not winging this. You're using great production value, and you're asking great, interesting questions. And yeah, this is obviously your journey, and it's been proud to be part of it today.
Thank you so much, mate. You're a legend.